When animating something for a video game, especially something like a boss, it's important to keep the player and how they will interact with the boss in mind. The player must be able to react to what the boss is going to do, to learn and anticipate based on prior experience. This requires consistency in the boss's animations, and the animations must demonstrate something that the player can learn from and react to. This comes, at least in games of this particular style, usually in the form of tells, movements that indicate to the player what is going to happen. For example, right here I have the first attack animation of my boss character. This animation consists of the boss raising its hand up and then swinging the sword down in a diagonal motion. This hand movement at the beginning of the animation is what is the tell. When the boss raises its hand up straight up like that, that indicates to the player that it's going to come down in this fashion. So normally you would try to dodge towards the sword to take advantage of the invincibility frames in that role. At least in terms of this game that I have storyboarded and created the boss based around. This is the basics of a boss fight in this style of game, and this is demonstrated in all of the animations that I've created for this boss fight. When it comes to the animating itself, it's important to follow a couple of general key rules. First, it may seem easier to just move everything as needed and keyframe it at every frame, but this can lead to choppy and unnatural animations. When animating, you want to pose out your character at specific increments and use those as keyframes, and then adjust the curves of movement in order to achieve the in-between movements of your animation. So if we go to the graph editor, you can see, let me grab some controls here so that we can see their keys. But if we were to look here, I have about 6 main key poses and a couple of occasional keys scattered throughout the controls. But this is how we can achieve smooth looking animations, as the in-betweens are gradual in nature. And if you need something that's a little sharper or whatever, there are different curve options. But mainly what you want to do is have individual poses somewhat spread out, that define the movements, and then in between frames that are smoothed out so that the animations look more natural and less like frame to frame choppy, because that just doesn't look as good. I started each of these animations with a clean file of the boss model. That way, it is more conducive to the project setup of an actual video game. And in Maya, we can also, like, since it's the same model, textures will all render into the animations without any hassle. Um, and they will all act as if they're the same model, which is useful for when it is put into a video game and for when we will be putting together the simulation of the video game in Maya itself later on. And that basically covers the animation portion of this project. There are 2 other attack animations as well as some movement cycles for this boss, which we will look at when we go into the proof of concept, or if you go down to the second part of the page, there are videos of all the animations listed below. From animating, we will move on to texturing on the next page.